About the craziness of America and what we're facing now. Let me go back to the question we had just before the break, and that is, I know common sense, but I don't necessarily know constitutional law and international law. Common sense tells me when you are asked to go into a war with your sworn enemy,
on the side of
your side.
Right.
That is the definition, common sense, of aiding and abetting your enemy.
There's only one crime defined in the Constitution, that's treason. The framers did that because the kings of England used to charge their political opponents who disagreed with them with treason. So they made it very clear. Providing aid and comfort to the enemy.
Explain what that means. Yeah, what's the narrow definition
Well,
of that?
Tokyo Rose was convicted of providing aid and comfort with words, but in the modern era, it would be more than words. It would be providing material assistance to an organization that is waging war or a state that is waging war against you. Now, the government prosecutes people for providing material assistance to terrorist organizations. That's life in prison. How could the government itself provide material assistance to a terrorist organization? What am I talking about? Al-Qaeda is fighting with others to take over the government of Syria.
They would make the case that, well, that's just one faction and they're not all connected, and so we're not helping them. We're just please, Judge, we're just helping the good guys.
When Bashar al-Assad is removed from office, they're not going to take a vote to decide who replaces him. Al-Qaeda will kill its allies that helped them overtake Bashar al-Assad in Syria so that Al-Qaeda, can run the government. And if we do anything to help Al-Qaeda by harming Bashar al-Assad, by weakening him, by degrading him, by leveling the playing field of the battlefield, as John McCain said, that will be the moral equivalent of providing aid and comfort to the enemy. That is known as treason. And if we bomb a country, if we enter the country militarily, absent those four conditions we just talked about, the president could be charged with a war crime for which there is no statute of limitations. And when he leaves office, he will not be able to travel to parts of the world that will recognize the charge against him. Example, Donald Rumsfeld today cannot travel to the EU because he's been charged in Spain with war crimes. And the whole EU, the European Union, recognizes Spain's charge and will enforce Spain's arrest warrant. That could happen to Barack Obama.
Well, it would cut down on his vacation expenses quite a bit.
And they are very expensive.
And they are very expensive. All right, so I said this on the air today, that I think the guy is committing treason. If he does it, he's committing treason. And I know the Constitution, was it 2 or 3 witnesses you have to have for treason?
2 witnesses to the same overt act.
Right.
You have 200 million
that's
witnesses
what I said.
Because of what he said last night on
That's
air.
what I said. I mean, honestly, I don't even know what the rating. Tiffany, what was the ratings last night for his speech? I'll bet you it was 30 million people.
I'm
well,
sure
you have 30 million people that watched him do it.
This is a president disdainful of international law because it frustrates him, contemptuous of the Constitution because if it's followed, it will confine him. He just simply doesn't care who he decides to kill, who he decides to attack. This is a president whose attorney general said, don't worry, the president wrote rules to govern himself when he decides which Americans to kill. No American president has ever publicly stated that, Lincoln aside, it was a civil war on our territory, that he could decide which Americans to kill. Do you think he would sweat for a moment when deciding which Syrians to kill? Of course not.
I had a liberal friend of mine, longtime liberal friend of mine.
We both have liberal friends.
Yeah, I know. Who I really respect. If you're liberal, you're liberal. If you're progressive, I got a problem with you. But liberal and progressive are different, because John McCain, John Boehner, they're conservatives and progressive.
They would not be happy with the conversation that we're having now.
No, I know that.
And they're not happy with the trends in the Republican Party because they're on the short end of that.
Oh, I know that. And I think this is fantastic. But none of these guys would had the conversation that I had with my liberal friend that they brought up. They said, you know, Glenn, if it were reversed, if you would have had a Republican do all this, our side, we would have impeached him by now.
Probably. Look, we learned just 2 days ago that the FISA court ordered the NSA to dial back its spying in the Bush administration. And the Obama administration sent Justice Department lawyers into the FISA court to get that dialing back undone, without getting too specific into the weeds because it's very technical. As a result of undoing the dialing back, as a result of what the Obama Justice Department lawyers persuaded the FISA court to do, the NSA now freely admits that it listens to every phone call made on every telephone, landline, or cell.
The president has said that's not true.
And reads every email and every text made in or passing through or originating from the United States.
And beyond that, keeps it for a period of time.
Yes, they now keep it for over 6 years. Back to your question. And you and I have never hesitated to criticize the Bush administration when we felt it violated the Constitution. Do you think George Bush would have undergone an impeachment had he done this?
Oh, yeah. So, would you press, if he strikes, would you press for treason? And would you press for, do you believe we should impeach him?
Yes, I believe we should impeach him for the NSA spying alone. It is the most massive, organized, systematic violation of expressly articulated constitutional freedoms in the history of the United States, again, putting aside the Civil War era. Treason would be more difficult. Why? Because a treason charge would have to be brought by a federal prosecutor, which he controls. At some point, he's not going to be the president of the United States. At some point, someone else will be. And that person's prosecutors could seek a charge of treason against the president. I don't think they would, because there's this habit of protecting your predecessor so that your successor will protect you.
One of the biggest mistakes I've ever seen was the forgiveness of Nixon. When Gerald Ford forgave him. My father was on the side of Nixon for almost the whole time. And then when it looked like he was bad, he kind of fudged around and he was like, well, he's no worse than the rest of them. He just got caught. And I remember being a kid thinking, that's not right.
George W. Bush has nothing to fear from Barack Obama, because Barack Obama needs that same sense of comfort from whoever, fill in the blank, succeeds him. Okay. It's an unwritten rule amongst presidents of the United States, so, even including Nixon.
So when we come back, I want to pick that. I want to pick it up there. So what's the game changer? Because I think the game changer is somebody, and I think Rand Paul and Ted Cruz and Mike Lee are leaders in this. Somebody's going to have a Charles Sumter moment, and they're going to say, enough, enough. And there will be people from the left and the right. And that's the secret to libertarian. That's what's so dangerous to these parties, and that's why they both take the chair away from the libertarians, because they include liberals and conservatives. So I want to ask you, the possibilities of a real libertarian movement for the first time in over 100 years when we come back.